Well, welcome to the Christmas edition of Topic. Today's programme includes the NUS Day of Action last Wednesday, Grand Year Carnival collection, and a report on the last Touchstone weekend. First of all, we have some late news. Around midnight on Tuesday, Willis Jackson House decided it was time to reclaim their mascot from Holbein House. The residents of Holbein retaliated with water and eggs. At this point, somebody across the road phoned the police, saying that there were people climbing scaffolding in front of Holbein House and throwing milk bottles. In fact, no milk bottles were thrown, although there were several people on the scaffolding. Unfortunately, as the police arrived, somebody dropped an egg on a car. The police objected to this and started to search the house, but eventually, after much muttering, they left, threatening action if anything further happened. Last night, Garden Hall decided that although Lord Garden's portrait looked rather well in the Holbein House cellar, perhaps it was time that it was returned to his rightful place. So 25 residents of Garden squashed into 3 cars and went down to Evelyn Gardens. After half an hour of wandering around Holbein House, negotiations started. Nothing happened until it was pointed out that although Holbein House had Lord Garden, Garden Hall now had their Christmas tree, and it looked very nice in a chimney pot on top of Garden Hall. After a debate, Holbein decided to do a swap, and Lord Garden is once more at home in Garden Hall.
And now for some news about the Grand Year Carnival collection. Students from all over college gathered in the Union on the morning of Saturday the 4th for this year's Grand Rag collection. Owing to a lack of stunts, it was decided to split into only 2 groups. One, led by Brian Darling, left for Kensington High Street, but finding little joy there, took the tube to Marble Arch and proceeded down Oxford Street. Meanwhile, the others, mainly Chem Eng 2, had collected some manure from Horse Guards Parade and had dragged this on a trolley across Hyde Park, dressed as rustics. The 2 groups met in Oxford Street and achieved reasonable success as they made their way via Oxford Circus and Regent Street to Piccadilly Circus. Boanerges, the Gills mascot veteran car, joined in by delighting the shoppers with high-speed runs along the route. At Piccadilly Circus, most of the collectors resorted to the Cockney Pride for a well-earned drink, but the trolley of manure was solemnly delivered to UC for disposal. And now here's Basha Jabba from ICE's Community Action Group to ask for some help.
There is a demonstration on Saturday in Oxford Street called Give Feet a Chance. Commitment, an organisation concerned with environmental problems, is going to close the street to traffic. Come along disguised as a Christmas shopper. Meet Hyde Park Corner, 10 o'clock, and the action starts 11. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We're now going to have a look at a film report of the City and Guilds A to Z rally. The City and Guilds Motor Club held their annual London A to Z rally on Sunday, December 4. The organiser was John Baird, the club's rally secretary. The rally started from Lincoln's Inn Fields near the Aldwych. Everyone synchronised their watches from the master clock, and after paying their entry money and collecting instructions and maps, they were off to a quick start in all directions. We had a very quick dash to the first checkpoint in Temple Place, where in fact the first car arrived within minutes. There were 12 cars with 3 or 4 people in each. Bow was one of the entrants. The rally was in 2 parts. The first section, ending in Temple Place, was about 3 miles long. The second section was about 12 miles long and it ended in Southside Bar. There were a number of clues to be found. Several only required a phone book. John Baird was still trying to find some of the answers shortly before the rally began. The rally was won by Dave Clements from physics, who's apparently a new part of Gills.
US Day of Action. This was a nationwide boycott of lectures with various meetings, demonstrations and leafleting. Here is a report on the Day of Action at IC.
A week ago yesterday, IC performed its bit for the NUS Day of Action as part of the campaign against the Green Paper. So, while most IC students were having a nice lie-in, our intrepid cameraman recorded the events for us. At first sight, the scenery was normal, though perhaps there were a few less people about. However, upon closer examination, tiny groups of leaflet distributors, hopefully called pickets, were to be seen huddling in dark doorways and near main entrances to college buildings. At least 2,500 bump sheets were given out to technicians, lecturers, professors and cleaners, and some students. Whether they had any effect is debatable. Who reads bump sheets anyhow? But although people who came to college were generally determined not to strike, it is quite possible that some were deterred or deferred by reasoned argument. No physical persuasion was used. Almost 200 students, mostly first years, turned up for physics and slightly less for mines. On the other hand, only 30 turned up in the electrical engineering department and 47 for maths. The last figure for maths was the biggest surprise, as a large turnout was predicted. In all departments, the lecturers arrived, but in many classes, after a quick chat with the blackleggers, the lectures were cancelled. After lunch, there was a mass meeting in the Great Hall for the USK colleges. There were several illustrious figures such as Lord Penny, Digby Jacks, the NUS president, Ernie Roberts, Assistant General Secretary of the AUEW, Dave Kay, Chairman of USK Executive, and a certain Mr. McCluge. The rector said that he stood by the committee of vice-chancellors and principals, but gave his own opinion that the student unions were a necessary part of the university life. He advised that the unions should prepare their own document and negotiate with the government on this. Ernie Roberts gave a typical trade unionist speech, mainly about the trade union autonomy and how students and workers should stand together. Digby Jacks gave the official NUS line and pointed out that there must be continuing action, especially after January the 23rd. Next, Miss Anne Ward, a prospective candidate for a London borough, compared the fight to that for free milk for school children. The best form of action would be to remove Mrs. Thatcher as a cabinet minister. The final speaker, Nick Ramsworth, put the small colleges' point of view over. If the Green Paper is implemented, most of them will have practically no money at all. After the mass meeting, another leafleting campaign took place. Various groups, including a large contingent from Chelsea College, split up and saturated the area with paper, green incidentally. Some members of the public actually read the sheets, and at least 30 sheets were eagerly collected by a coachload of school children outside the Science Museum. However, many passers-by seemed genuinely interested. Hence, the public's interest engendered by this part of the campaign is perhaps the most significant part of the proceedings. Perhaps on January the 23rd, this side will be more carefully emphasized. The USK presidents joined the President's March to the DES. This was successful from the publicity point of view.
After the mass meeting, we invited some of the speakers into the studio. First, Lord Penny.
I have with me in the studio Lord Penny, Rector of Imperial College. Rector, can you give us your opinions, please, on the government's consultative document on student union finance?
Yes. In my opinion, the student union is a most important part of the educational process in the college. And I therefore wouldn't want to see an important outside influence, such as a registrar, coming in to control the unions. Similarly, I wouldn't want to see the membership of a union being voluntary, because I'm afraid a lot of students would then make the mistake of not joining. For the same reason, I'm opposed to split financing. although I'm not opposed to clubs charging a small fee, decided by that club and the union, especially when it's an expensive club. I think that the finance must now come from the University Grants Committee, because the Green Document has promised this and the local authorities want to start having to pay this bill. Within that statement, of course, there's a good deal of room for negotiation. I think also, and this is very important, that the students must not refuse to negotiate. If they do that, the decisions will be made and the students won't have a leg to stand on. The students don't like the document, and nor do I, but I think the proper way is for the students to put on paper their case and table that, and then say, well, now let's negotiate. There's the Green Document, there's our document. Let's start from there.
Rector, thank you very much indeed.
Unfortunately, both Ernie Roberts and Digby Jacks had to dash to another meeting and didn't have time to come into the studio. Ernie Roberts, the Assistant Secretary of some union, seemed more interested into getting union solidarity without worrying too much about the reasons for the dispute. Digby Jacks, President of NUS, gave all the reasons for NUS being against the Green Paper. During questions, Piers Corbyn managed to waste about 5 minutes making a long rambling statement before being brought to the point of actually asking a question. The next two speakers were Miss Anne Ward, a Labour member of Lambeth Council and a prospective parliamentary candidate, and Nick Rainsford from the Chelsea College of Art, representing the small colleges at the USC meeting. Hello? Yeah, sure. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. We are having a tape in a very short time of the USC meeting. Just hang on a bit.
Big Daddy in Drag featuring Don Garlitz. We have in the studio now Mrs. Anne Ward, who is the Southwark Labour councillor, and she in fact fought Duncan Sands at the last election, and also Nick Rainsford, who's a member of the Students' Union of Chelsea College of Art. Anne, can I ask you, as a Labour councillor, what is your opinion on this Green Paper?
Well, I'm not speaking authoritatively as a Labour councillor, but all I can say is God help student union funds if they're left to the prejudices of some councils. I believe myself that student union funds should be independent and that students should have the right to decide how they're going to be spent.
Do you in fact think there is a problem with student union finance at all?
I don't know administratively whether there are any problems. I mean, it seems to me that it's simple enough to work out ways of checking accounts if there is any slip-up, and I don't have enough experience to know whether there are any failures in this respect. But on the actual question, and this seems to me the nub of the thing, as to whether or not students should have the right to spend their funds in certain political directions, this is a matter for the Students' Union, and it isn't a matter for outside intervention.
You're obviously opposed to the paper. Can you tell us, sort of outline what sort of tactics you think the Students' Unions should take?
Well, I'm opposed to the whole thinking behind the paper. I'm particularly feel very cynical about the fact that it's labelled a consultative document because of the fact that I've had quite an amount of experience in trying to consult with the present Secretary of State for Education. I've been involved both with the milk issue, where we're paying for school milk, despite the attempts of the government to stop us, and where we have been trying to see the minister to put over a desperate school case in our area, Thomas Carlton, a secondary comprehensive school in our area, which is in appalling conditions, and she has just brought the chopper down dead on the rebuilding of this school. We have been trying to consult, and she won't even see us to talk about it, and my own feeling is that the mind in the ministry is so rigid that consultation is just meaningless.
So you're a bit sort of doubtful about the actual sort of consulting aspects of this paper, consultative aspects?
Yes, I think the students' unions must be prepared to go through any form of presenting their ideas, because this is important from the standpoint of public relations. But I don't think consultation means anything to the present minister.
Can we go on to you, Nick, now? Can you just tell us how Chelsea College of Art, as a fairly small college, and the other small colleges, how are they going to be affected by the proposals in the Green Paper?
Well, Digby Jacks put it very well at the meeting here at Imperial lunchtime today, when he said this proposal from the government will greatly hurt the large colleges, will reduce the scope of their student unions, but they will in fact kill the student unions in the small colleges. Our own college, with only 240 students, has got a total budget on the student union account of about £800 at the moment. Under the Thatcher proposals, this will be reduced to approximately £60, and of that, a good 20 would have to go in auditors' fees, just to make sure that we weren't misappropriating the rest.
Mm-hmm. So that's less than 10% of what you got now.
It leaves us with a derisory
very
sum,
small,
which is, of course, quite impossible to run any meaningful student union on.
What do you think the motivation behind the Green Paper is?
I think the motivation is frankly political. It smacks of a government which is trying to make cheap political capital at the expense of student unions because they believe that students are unpopular in the community. I can see no justification for the economic demands of the proposals because, quite honestly, student union funds are very, very scrupulously administered at present. There are only a few small, minor examples which can be pointed to of misappropriation.
Can you just tell us briefly what you think students should do to oppose the Green Paper proposals?
I myself am a great believer in education. I believe that we have got the support of college authorities and principals because they recognize that these Department of Education and Science consultative proposals are unworkable. And I'm sure that as we can bring our cause and our opinions to a wider public, people will recognize the justice of our attack on this document and will support us in our fight to retain student union autonomy.
Nick Rainsford and Anne Ward, thank you very much for being with us.
As has been said, this was an USC meeting. In fact, there only appeared to be 3 colleges present: IC, Chelsea College and Queen Elizabeth College. Boycotting lectures seems to have meant that everybody stayed home in bed. To find out what USC is doing about the Green Paper, we next spoke to the USC Executive Chairman, Dave Kay, from QEC.
I have with me Dave Kay, last year's president of Queen Elizabeth College Student Union. He's also chairman of the USC Action Committee. Dave, can you outline what the USC colleges are doing in the NUS campaign against the Green Paper?
Yes, well, we organised the area march as part of the All London March on November the 17th. Today we organised a mass meeting in the Great Hall with speakers from the trade unions, the local councils, the president of NUS and the rector of Imperial College to give their attitudes to the Green Paper. And we'll also help in any way possible with the organisation of the national demonstration on January 23rd and any subsequent activity.
You have a big leafleting session this afternoon.
Yeah, yes, we're trying to get across to the public as much as we can, and we hope about 75,000 leaflets will be distributed this afternoon in the Kensington and Chelsea area.
Thanks very much, Dave.
I forgot that one.
So there it is. The boycott of lectures was pretty good, but the meeting and leaflets were badly attended. Students seem to find not doing something fairly easy, but actually getting up and doing something seems too much for them. Let's hope that there will be better support for the mass demonstration on January the 23rd. It's your union which has been threatened. Taylor Memorial's silly football match took place last Thursday lunchtime in Hyde Park. The Physics Secretaries United played against the postgraduate Wanderers, who were tied by the leg in pairs. The first half of 10 minutes was dominated by the PGs, while the Secretaries learnt the game. No goals were scored. The PGs scored shortly after the start of the second half, but the ladies were quick to get even with a goal, which might have been illegal. After some interesting play, there followed 2 goals in close succession, 1 to each side. About this time, someone released a smoke bomb in the ladies' goal mouth, which distracted the attention of the crowd. The last goal was scored by the secretaries just before the end of an overlong second half. This made the final score Physics Secretaries 3, Postgraduates 2. All proceeds from programmes went to USC-RAG. On Monday night, Gill's choir set out 60 strong to go carol singing and to collect money for the Carnival charity. They started outside Southside, then through the Mews to Knightsbridge. Here all 60 piled onto a Piccadilly-bound omnibus. The 10 other passengers didn't seem to like the carol, The Holly and the Ivy, perhaps as this was sung all the way to Piccadilly. The bus conductor also seemed slightly put out after several won to Piccadilly. A certain member of Gill's asked for one to Bethlehem. The evening was a great success and made about £100. Last Friday, RCS had their annual carnival ball, the Stellar Stomp. This was apparently a very pleasant evening. On Monday, Gill's were not the only carol singers. IC Choir were also out collecting money for USC. Over to you, Dave.
Well, you've probably seen this leaflet around college. They're trying to get rid of Piers Corbyn again. We have asked Piers Corbyn into the studio to find out what it's all about. Piers, can you tell us what's going on?
Well, the leaflet generally explains itself, but as far as I can see, it's a continuation of last time. I don't think that the college and the department really decided to let me stay in October, but they thought they'd leave it for a while and maybe have a go again later. And I think part of the reason why they're trying to get me out of the place is to make an example of me as a warning to other students that might be too critical of this place. The case itself is absolutely ridiculous. Only 2 months ago that they said, after an awful lot of pressure from the ASTMS and Imperial College Union and the NUS, that I'd done just enough work over the summer and would be able to come back. And at the same time they warned me formally that I would have to work very hard, etc., etc. Well, I took it that even with the warning, I understood, okay, I'm back, I'll start again from October with what I would regard as more or less a clean sheet. Well, now, of course, you see, they turn around and say, aha, you haven't been working, and you were warned, so you've got to go. And they say both that I've got to leave in January the 1st and that my grant be terminated on January the 1st. I think it's absolutely ridiculous to judge postgraduates on the basis of 2 months' work, which is what it is. And if they're going to do this, then it's going to mean in the future that they'll have to set up some super professors or something like that to ensure that the professors are actually supervising adequately, because to throw people out on the basis of 2 months' work is going to need an awful lot of supervision. Well, some people, of course, have asked me, well, have I been working? Well, I have, in fact, been working over the last 2 months, as far as I've been able, despite some rather acute personal problems in October. I've even got some results which my supervisor agrees are worth looking into. But actually, this level of work isn't really the issue, because some postgraduates spend maybe 5 years before they get anywhere with their.
Piers, this seems quite a serious problem. Can you tell us just briefly what you think IC students should do about it?
Yeah, well, very briefly, I just wanted to say that the Imperial College Union Council have given me unanimous support, so have the postgraduates ASTMS. And I hope, of course, the IC ASTMS will, as they did before, and the messengers are taking a very great interest in this. And so what students can actually do is, I think, first thing, go along to any friendly member of staff you think and tell them you think it's ridiculous. But I think you have to be prepared for some sort of mass action next term, because if they can do this to me, they could do this to anybody. And you have a lot of mass action on your hands with the Green Paper as well.
Okay, thanks a lot then, Piers. Now that we're getting near the end of term, this is our last programme for this term, what we thought we'd do was to have a look at a film review of the term, some of the films we've taken during the term. Well, the term started with the usual Freshers' Day activities. And eventually everyone settled down to some work. The first news of the term was academic. Professor Gabor, the Emeritus Professor of Applied Electron Physics in the Electrical Engineering Department, was awarded the Nobel Prize for his work on holography. The same week saw Westminster Council deciding to replace the gas lights in Prince Consort Road. This so upset RCS Union President Union Secretary, Martin C. Black, that he proposed a motion at a union meeting to mandate the union president to chain himself to a gas lamp to stop its removal. Further student action seems to have temporarily stopped Westminster Council. A more important event that week was the publication of the government green paper on student union finance. This led to a large demonstration by London colleges on November the 27th. Us colleges started their own march, with Imperial College joining in from the Queen's Tower. The march proceeded to the University of London Union in Mallet Street, where they joined the main London march, and then everyone converged on the offices of the DES. In order not to jeopardise relationships with the public, the annual towpath battle at Morphy was postponed until Rag Week next term. This left a very quiet Morphy day, and supporters of the constituent colleges could actually watch the boat races. Guilds won 2 races, with Mines winning the 3rd one. Later on in the day, the Women's Lib organisation were demonstrating about the Miss World concert outside the Royal Albert Hall. Guilds have been very much in evidence this term, starting with the Brighton run. Seem to be having a few technical hitches.
Sorry, say again.
Thank you. Just find out what's going on. Hello? I see. Yeah. We're just having a look at the Brighton run, I think. Fine. All right. Good. Fine. All right. This is Mission Control I'm talking to now. Yes. Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. Right. All right. Okay. Okay, we seem to be all right now, I hope. Said it was near the end of term. We should be looking at some film of the Brighton Run very soon. Still having problems? Okay, 2 more seconds. Someone says then we go home. Okay, well, why don't I tell you that... Oh, here we go. Very good. This was held on Sunday, November the 7th. This is the Brighton Run, and Bo was one of the entrants, and Bo turned out with the support of Guildsmen roused from Southside at 6 a.m, I believe it was. We had problems filming Bo on the run, as our camera car couldn't keep up, actually. We didn't have Jackie Stewart driving us. Okay, the following Saturday was Guild Show, which is sometimes known as the Lord Mayor's Show. Guilds provided a float with the theme Students Today, Engineers Tomorrow. Carnival funds were boosted considerably. Unfortunately, the Lord Mayor had no change, actually, for the collecting tins. Bo eventually caught up with the procession, although was stopped by the police several times for speeding. The climax of the term was the NUS Day of Action on December the 8th that we've reported earlier in this programme. This and other action was proposed at the NUS conference at Margate earlier in the month. Now back to Hugh.
Thank you, Dave. And now Touchstone. The 100th Touchstone weekend took place at Silwood Park on the 5th and 6th of December. The topic was America and Asia, a clash of cultures. The guest speaker from the American Embassy could not come and was replaced by Professor Philip Calkins, Professor of Indian History at the University of Chicago, a member of the Committee on South Asian Studies, formerly consultant to the Ford Foundation on South Asia. The weekend was quite dramatic in several ways. It started with the change of speaker and continued with his non-arrival. After a prolonged search of the college, he was eventually located, and apparently he had gone to Mechenge, where they had never heard of Touchstone. The final drama was the non-arrival of the coach on Sunday to take them back. The coach firm was not on the phone, and it was eventually discovered that the coach had arrived almost an hour late, and as it was then dark, he could not turn into Silwood Park owing to the sharp turning. I will now read a report of the weekend. "We were questioning," said the speaker, "whether Western technology was something that could be given to underdeveloped countries, provided we overcame conservative, peasant, and religious prejudices. There were various attitudes to the East which complicated relationships. The Westerner regarded the East as exotic, full of snake charmers, beautiful women, and holy men, or religious, with the emphasis on spirituality, or ridden by caste, with a hierarchical society, female infanticide, heathen, or poor, overpopulated, unhealthy, neutralist, democratic. The exotic view persisted through the colonial period and was still with us. The religious was cultivated by the East to compensate for being subject. The caste view had been influenced by Catherine Mayo's mother, India. There had been curious views of the Easterner as the lesser breed. He can starve to death with extreme complacency. The white Western Christian regarded himself as stronger than the weak, servile, passive Easterner. America saw itself as a protector of the Chinese against the evil Europeans. Americans saw themselves as the disinterested good guys who could guide China into the 20th century. When in 1948 China became communist, they thought they had lost China. They had never had it. The American attitude had been that of hurt pride and a rejected parent. Groups discussed the likelihood and the results of American withdrawal from Asia. Whether there had been a rational basis for US policy over the last 20 years, future relationships, the usefulness of navies, and the likelihood of atomic war. And that's the report. There are 2 Touchstone weekends next term. In January, Dr. Vera Bleu, lecturer at Schiller College, the American Liberal Arts College in Paris, will be talking about solitude and terror from the outside, from the dramatist's point of view. This is partly for the benefit of the Nightline organization. In March, Mary Whitehouse will be talking about the attack on freedom. Mary Whitehouse, of course, needs no introduction. And that's about it, Dave, I think.
Oh, hello. Well, here we are at the end of yet another term at Imperial College. For some of you, your first term, and for some, to put it in a way we'll all understand, your nth term, where n is a large positive integer, in some cases tending to infinity. And what a term it's been! Freshers' Day went off in the usual boring way, with all the freshers being conned into joining various societies by virtue of the various activities these various societies said they would be taking part in, but which for various reasons they never got round to doing anyway. One shining example, however, is Apathy Sock, who said all along that they weren't going to be doing anything at all, and by virtue of their non-existent constitution still require a president, a secretary and a treasurer. Having recovered from Freshers' Day, we all sauntered enthusiastically along to our first union meeting, where we met Imperial College's answer to Mary Whitehouse, President John McCulloch. Freshers have last year's students to thank for the election of this gentleman, but they must realise that when next year's elections come up, the choice of candidates will be just as bad as last year. One event of this term which received very little publicity was the edifying sight several people were subjected to one evening of seeing Mr. Nick Wilkinson walking naked through the Union Lower Lounge. As a friend of mine used to say, whatever turns you on, baby. Surely in this case it should be whatever turns everybody else off. It was the intention of Union Deputy President Mr. Dave Amos that the Union facilities should be improved in order to encourage more students to use them. Consequently, soon after the beginning of term, those of us who ever dare venture across Prince Consort Road found in the Union Lower Lounge 2 pinball machines, a machine for the playing of phonographic reproductions of popular musical melodies, commonly known as a jukebox, and later in the term, a machine for the sale of non-alcoholic beverages, which still doesn't work. Also, for those of us in the know, there appeared in the gentlemen's toilets what I took to be a bubblegum machine. On depositing the requisite number of coins in this machine, I attempted to partake of the gum. The gum proved to be of a rather rubbery texture, but was in fact excellent for the blowing of bubbles. Whether these improvements in the Union facilities have encouraged more people to use the Union, or simply encouraged those of us who normally use the Union to use it more often, is a very debatable point. On the 21st of October, a leading article in Felix stated that another of Mr. Mooney's pet cockroaches had been found nestling in its rightful place, the middle of a Yorkshire pudding. Being a Yorkshireman myself, I cannot imagine a better place to nestle. However, the article took up less than 1/3 of the front page, and very little, if not sweet FA, has been heard about the matter since. The most important matter to concern students this term has been the green paper issued by the government. I won't insult you all by stating again just what this said, but 1 or 2 points must be raised in connection with it. An even bigger union meeting than that concerned with women and the union bar was the scene of discussion, amendment, and surprisingly, agreement, even with some of Piers Corbyn's ideas. For the first time, we saw our favourite president and exec galvanised into action with the support of a sizable majority of the union. A large contingency of IC students took part in the march on November the 17th. It was interesting to see students from this college taking part in anything that smacks of, dare I say, revolution. The union meeting decided to cancel Morphy Day. The reason given was that we should appear to the public to be adults. Well, I say, why not hold Morphy Day in private? A bill was passed a few years ago about consenting adults in private. The enthusiasm of the union meeting and the march didn't last long at Imperial College. For the union meeting, the Great Hall was packed out. But on the day of action, December 8th, the whole of USK couldn't pack out the Great Hall. So this term has been as bad as any other one. At the beginning of term, we hear our new session is a great opportunity to start afresh and to do many new and exciting things. But as the term progresses, we realise it's going to be just as bad and just as boring as ever. We never seem to get round to doing the things we said we would. I don't know what the hell we're doing here at all. But don't despair. If you always go round with a smile on your face, don't blame me if people think you're stupid. Now, how do I get out of this place?